There's a companion video to this in which I talk about anger in the Psalms. And I think when we talk about anger in the Bible, we probably are drawn first to the Old Testament. The Old Testament is where God seems to do a lot of smiting of people, and many references in the Psalms to anger.
I think of one particular psalm that a time when I was really kind of frustrated with someone and everything I'd done for them was no good and whatever, and I read this psalm and I found it quite extraordinary because in it I heard God mirroring the feelings that I was having of that anger and frustration. So it's Psalm 78, and it goes through listing all the things that God's done and the people still didn't do the right thing and they still ignored him and still got fed up and moaned and whatever. And then in the middle of this psalm there's this wonderful moment where there is a verse where God says, "But he remembered that they were but flesh." And I think that sort of sense of God's mercy, even though there is all that anger and frustration, was just an extraordinary moment for me.
And that, I guess, takes us to the Gospels and the story of redemption and grace in the Gospels. There is actually a fair amount of anger in the stories of Jesus, I think. There are a number of occasions where Jesus is clearly angry, often, interestingly, when people are being hypocritical or people are being unjust to each other. And certainly in some of the parables, particularly the parables about masters and servants and money, the masters often end up in those parables enraged by the way in which the servants behave. So plenty of anger in those parables, but maybe elsewhere as well.
Yeah, and I think, some of the kind of favourite parables you find in there a kind of hidden anger. I mean, the obvious one is the prodigal son, which is something that kind of everybody knows. We remember the part about the son having his inheritance and then wasting it all and then coming back to God who forgives him. But there doesn't seem to be any anger there. But then as the parable moves on, that moment where the elder son is there grumbling and being grumpy, and there's that kind of passive-aggressive thing where, it's not fair. You gave this terrible child of yours that's wasted everything a party, and I've never had anything to do for my friends. And I think that's is a really kind of interesting reflection on anger and sometimes our reaction to God's generosity. But I think where it moves on, which is something maybe that we don't always think about, is that God's response to that is to say, "You've always been with me, I've always loved you, and we can rejoice because your brother has returned." And I think there is that kind of sense of mercy and understanding that in that psalm that I spoke about, that reflects what God is like, acknowledges the anger, but wants to celebrate and for things to be positive and to move on from there.